Now that we have the interior columns in place, it's time to put those beams that I was talking about on top of them. Now, to do this, we need to be inside of a different plan altogether, and it's going to be the basement ceiling plan. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here, and I'm choosing basement ceiling plan because it's the level that we have that's absolutely closest to where these beams need to be located at. It also gives us a good look at where these column locations are going to be. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to pick on structure. From there, you're going to see we have a beam command. If you select on the beam, you'll see that we have a few things available, but the thing that we want here is going to be a steel beam. In this case, is a W8 by 13. Steel beams come in a variety of different sizes. In this case, a W happens to indicate the type of shape that the beam is. An 8 by 13 happens to indicate sort of the size and dimensions and to a certain extent the structural strength that this beam is going to have. I'm going to go ahead and select on the W8 by 13, and we're going to need to place this. And sometimes this is the hardest part of this process, just getting it into the right spot, because it doesn't always just snap where you might want it to. So just kind of eyeball it and get it really close right here in the middle of our column. You can even zoom in, nothing's going to hurt to do that. And then just click that to be your first place. Now move over, and this is going to need to be a 10-foot span. So go ahead and just type in 10 foot, and there we have our beam going across from the center of our column over to the center of the next one. And now it gets to be easier because it just snaps right to the end of that one. Click here, come over, make sure to type in 10 foot. Now we have the right distance there. Do that one more time. And this time just bring it over to roughly the middle of this foundation wall. What actually occurs in this condition is it goes to something that's called a beam pocket. And I'm going to click here where it says 5 foot. And in reality, what happens is these steel beams will sit in this pocket. It kind of looks like a giant U shape, and it'll just sort of sit there inside of that U shape and get supported by the foundation wall there. We don't need to model it. In fact, if you were going to call that out in a plan, you would just draw in with some line work saying that this is where that beam pocket is going to be at. Next, I'm going to come over here and draw in another beam from here over to here. So I'm going to select on beam. Once again, we have that endpoint. It's going to make it real easy. Come straight on over. And I'm just going to pick right about here. It doesn't really matter because you're not going to see it. The beam's just going to kind of stop right there anyway. Now that we've done that, we can see where each of these are going to go to. And we also need to do the same thing down here. So once again, come up here, select on your beam, pick the midpoint here, and just come straight on over. Now I'm going to click right here. You can see how it draws it from here on over. The exact distance I'm not being too concerned about with at the moment. Regardless of how long you actually end up making it, this isn't a long enough span to weaken an 8 by 13 beam. It's pretty tough. I'm going to come over here, click again. Now, it should always be noted that if you're going to be designing your house, just like with the columns, you always need to have someone size your beams for you. This 8 by 13 is a pretty typical one, and as long as it spans about no farther than 10 feet, it usually holds up really nice and strong. But you never know, depending on the loads up above, you might need to have something a little bit sturdier, a little bit thicker, a little bit bigger, or you might even be able to have something that's smaller in size, which will ultimately end up saving you money. So it's always good to get an architect or engineer involved in sizing these sorts of beams.